You're listening to Raiding the Fringe with Poda, Ostinius, Nepids, and Dr. Lee. From ancient civilizations to the cutting edge of science, from exploring the outer reaches of space to the Atlantean depths, we discuss the topics of the unknown and the possibilities of the bizarre. Are you hungry to expand your horizons? Come get your fill as we raid the fringe. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Raiding the Fringe. Today will be episode 2 of Questions with Poda, where I just pose some random thoughts I have to my friends and we discuss them. Here, as always, with me is Ostinius.
Hello.
Nebids.
Good evening.
And Dr. Lee.
Good day.
I'm not 100% sure where to start. I broke them into categories of anthropological, animals, and government. I got 2 anthros, 3 animals, and 1 government.
We don't need categories, man. Just throw one at us.
We'll go with the fun one first. If animals could speak, would they have accents located... Would they have accents with their... Oh, let me reword this.
They'd be located like in this general area if they had accents.
No, by location, by where they live.
Yeah, or would they have the accents of their country of origin, or would it be more based on where they grew up? Like, say, a lion in a zoo probably would have a different accent than a lion that actually grew up in Africa.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
What happens if that zoo was in Africa?
Oh, I think that's a no-brainer. Not only do I think they would have different accents depending on where they grew up or lived, but I think if the animals could talk and talk to each other yet, like lion would be its own accent and frog would be its own accent. And so if the frog was in Africa, he'd have an African frog accent. It'd be like blending and mixing kind of things.
Yeah. But I would have to say, though, that the animals couldn't talk to each other.
Well,
A frog couldn't talk to a lion.
I imagine the lion in the zoo would have the South Park like accent. Oh, hello, boy.
Why are lions gay?
Why not? Nothing wrong with that.
He grew up in the zoo. What does he know?
Yeah, he's got pride.
No, but seriously, like there's 1 male lion to a zoo to like 5 females for breeding and stuff like that. What is a male lion in a zoo knowing? You know what I mean? Growing up, he would, hello, boy. Like if there was like a Jungle Book, Mowgli, hello.
I think a lion by himself in the zoo would sound more like Scar, because he has no competition and he is supreme in his realm.
Oh, that's if he's confident. If he's in a zoo, he's getting beat up and stuff.
That brings up...
What kind of zoo?
Are you talking about like a circus?
Oh, no, that's 2 more points to that question. Is like if you're putting forth that the animals can't talk between each other, even though they can't talk because they have different languages, well, then Disney is a complete fantasy because everybody can communicate. But then competency, like a lion that's growing up in a zoo, he may be able to speak, but he could still be, not a very good speaker. Like, I would say completely illiterate.
Hey, I'm one of those stupid kind of lions. Yeah. Who's to say what age was this lion taken into captivity?
Well, we could look at like prisons. Do people talk different in prisons after they've been there for a while? Because that's what a zoo is.
Yeah.
Yes, they do. Yeah, they end up gaining that short 2 to 3 syllable sentence. Yeah. You know, they end up coming out more like Sylvester Stallone than when they went in.
Hey, wait. Hey.
Yeah.
A-E-I-O-U and sometimes Y, eh?
Hey, I want to get a fight.
Why are all prisons in Boston now?
I didn't say wicked awesome. You got a wicked awesome. Ah.
East
So, Poda,
Coast.
this was your question. So, in your scenario where these animals can talk, if or if not they have accents, are they speaking English in this question, or is it just something that we can understand?
Well,
Is it America?
that's the catch, is because even if they could talk, would we listen? Would we understand them?
Hold on.
Would they speak
Is it
English?
America?
What do you mean by if they could talk, is what I'm saying.
Oh, yes, they can talk. We just don't understand.
Okay, but is it America?
Some animals live in America, yes.
Okay, they speak English.
Well, let's say,
depending on the location. What if they grew up in whatever city that's predominantly Spanish or
Wait,
Italian?
say, okay,
I still need it to be clear. Are you saying that he's like the lion is still speaking lion, but it is a language, or are you saying lion can speak English now?
I thought he was asking about the accents, like from regional accents, like how you can still speak any
that
language.
plays into it too. But French people can speak with an American accent, but they don't speak English. So if a lion still speaks lion, but speaks it with a French lion accent, and we don't know the difference because we can't tell the difference between the lion dialect.
And
yeah, a lion from Africa would be like, "Roar," but then a lion in a French zoo would be like, "Roar." Yeah.
Roar. No, but everybody talks different. Like, in America, apparently people say we talk slow. Like when they make fun of our language.
That depends on which area of America. I mean, every language has its own dialect.
Yeah, but I'm just saying when people make fun of Americans, they're like, "Hello, partner." You know what I mean? They usually were really slow.
That's the same basis off of English accents, and you saying "Good day, governor." You know what I mean? Like, you say like that.
It's hard for them to do.
Yeah.
How many governors did those people actually talk to, though?
No, but the fact is that you have your southern dialect and your.
Well, I wasn't saying southern, but if you look, that a lot of nations say that we talk slow. I know you can watch like the Gilmore Girls and not understand what they're saying because they're on the East Coast and they talk like a mile a minute. Yes, you have those type of accents.
Canadian French and stuff like that.
Yes.
You said Gilmore Girls.
No, I have no idea what you said because you kind of went out there, so I just said yes.
No, I just said Gilmore Girls. You're also talking Canadian people and Canadian French, and that's a totally also different kind of mesh of English and what have you.
So even though I still don't know whether you mean they're talking a different language or we can just finally understand their language, either way, we're all agreeing, yes, they will have different accents for their regions and their circumstances.
Or is that just...
If Disney did do a dialect, and they've done in Finding Nemo, they did pelicans in Australia for Finding Nemo. Oh, rubber duck! And you know what I mean? Like, that pelican was Australian. If they had done one in Boston, he probably would have been, wicked awesome. You know what I mean? Like, it would have been a different... I believe they would have been regionally eclectic.
But how about this? Are we just using our own perception of saying, yes, everybody would have a different dialect just because that's what we know? What happens if the animals themselves actually don't even, have dialect? You know what I mean? Or are we just imprinting what we know onto other things, just like we did with aliens?
That, sir, that's the question that Poda asked.
That's the question. I'm saying, yes, I believe they would have their own accents depending on where they're from. A Tasmanian devil that might have grown up in America would be different from a Tasmanian devil in Australia.
America. Yeah. Oi. Yeah. All right. With Bigfoot being allegedly so close genetically to humans, do you think COVID-19 is affecting the population?
They are pretty much self-isolated and quarantined. If it is affecting them, it's not much.
I would say that it'd be interesting to find a human genetic gene that would affect them. But the fact that, as of currently, their species hasn't been 100% proven, and we can't say how close they are to humans, that's a moot question.
So
no, I mean, but would other, that cat in Manhattan, that tiger got full of coronavirus. Why couldn't Bigfoot?
It's true. It's possible.
I'm not saying it's impossible, but he said, given how close Bigfoot are to humans, we have no idea. There's not been any conclusive DNA of Bigfoot.
See,
there have been DNA.
In each of these, I put myself in the world of Poda's question. If he says something's given, it is now when I answer.
Yeah, it's given.
Because absolutely, so far, 0% of Poda's questions have applied to reality as it already is.
That we know of. That we're aware
This is, every single time, this is Poda posing a posit of what if, and you got to start off thinking, where's he coming from? Let's enter his world and answer it.
I would have to agree with Lee that these things, still avoid us very well. So, it would have to be really, the whole place would have to be overran with the disease before it started jumping to things that are always hiding.
Yeah.
Yeah, but a lot of people
supposedly it started from what, like a bat? Or there was a bat that had COVID-19?
Supposedly, there's other things that are coming out.
That is explicit from the human race. So there's no saying that a Bigfoot or Sasquatchian individual could not gain this disease.
This bat was come upon by the most dense populated country in the world. And so, the people got it.
But what I am saying is that the coronavirus itself is not as bad right now because of social distancing. So these things are already been social distancing their whole lives.
Right.
So getting that disease would probably be really hard.
And what I'm saying is it's because of people practicing social distancing and the people that have already prepared for doomsday type scenarios like this, who may already been infected, but they're still within that 7-day mark, took off into the woods to get away from the major cities and spread the disease.
Actually, I will tell you what. During this whole social distancing thing, I went to a state park and drove around. And I will tell you what. Social distancing my ass. People were picnicking and camping around fucking elbow to elbow everywhere in that joint. So the fact that kind of contagion spreading...
They're debating closing all the parks, though, too, so that can't happen anymore.
Again, though, also, I'm not trying to oust where you guys live. You guys are riddled. Almost as much as the state capital. That area is pretty bad.
Only if you're old. Susceptible. Adversely, I believe that I would think that the Sasquatchian people would have made themselves susceptible to it, so that way their immune systems could build against it, and they would have done that earlier on. They're less susceptible to the flu, therefore they are less susceptible to a lot of this other stuff because they are of a hardier nature.
Because they would have caught the flu by now. That would already be going around in their population because the flu has been around forever.
Right. But they would have, them being of hardier stock, would have built up an immunity to said things, which would make them less susceptible to catching, certain strains.
Even without an immunity, say the one Bigfoot that does get caught by that guy who lost his proof, and so, he still remains hidden, but they made contact and he caught it. He will probably get over it because he's one of the young, healthy people that are out hunting and being seen and stuff. And
you can't catch it twice. Like, once you got it, and you're done.
And there aren't cities of them. They are either solitary or small families. So even if it does catch it, it's not going to spread to a huge percentage of the population unless that one family is the percentage of the population.
And
I don't know. I've heard stories about, South Korea where people who already had it are getting it again. So, like,
I hadn't heard that.
It depends on where you get your news from, I guess. And
North Korea.
I'm just saying I heard stuff. I'm not saying that it's 100%.
Yeah, I would think if Sasquatch was affected by this virus, now would be the time to go out to look for evidence, because there would be wheezing in the bushes and coughing, and there would be dead bodies.
A Bigfoot squatting, a Sasquatch squatching in the bushes.
But okay, so this disease, the mortality rate is higher for older people, and I would assume that it would be the same for another species. And even the unbelievable sightings that may or may not have been of Sasquatch, none of them are gray-haired old grandma Bigfoots. They're always the young adult males or females.
And then, scientifically speaking, if it takes out all the elders before they have a chance to pass on the knowledge of living in the woods, then that could detriment the groups as well, because they wouldn't. I mean, do they have that inherent thing that we say animals have? Instinct?
Yeah.
And I would say they would have already taught their children by that time.
Yeah,
That's true.
you would assume so.
You don't wait.
It's like, stop eating that mushroom.
You can only learn from grandmother. I'm your parent. I ain't teaching you crap. So, no, I think they'd be fine.
I think that'd be fine too.
All right.
Yeah, I think
Even if we did catch it, I don't think it would be as much of an issue as it is with humans. I think they are of a hardier stock.
All right. Last creature feature question. The Loch Ness Monster. A possible idea of why it's so hard to find the Loch Ness Monster, not alone with the discussions of underground caverns going to and from the ocean and then leaving part of the year, but what if they actually hibernate underground? Like they lock themselves up in a mud hole or something and hibernate like a bear for the better part of the year. Would that coalesce with the time spans of the sightings and why you can't find it the majority of the time, and how something could go so long and unnoticed because the majority of the time they're actually in a hibernetic state?
If you're discounting underwater caverns and such, I don't really see that as probably a possibility. As large as the Loch Ness Monster is, hiding under the dirt, you're still going to have this mountain under the lake that didn't used to be there.
Well, I understand that. I'm saying the cavern thing is, it's been talked about, but it hasn't been 100% verified, because then that would just mean they're coming and going through the ocean, and the Loch Ness creature is actually an ocean-dwelling creature that comes in for probably breeding purposes or something like that, or like a nursery.
I think, Lee talking about that, that depends on the scale of the size of the monster itself. Based off this huge thing of water, however close or far it is from the shore where people can depict it, depends on their scale of the monster. And I would think, I'm going to disagree with Poda's, assumption. I think that if they did hibernate, you would see a more of a mass majority of many of them, because they have been silent for so long. And when they resurface as a special thing, they would come up as a group, kind of like sea turtles getting put on certain shores and stuff. It would be a thing that you wouldn't be able to ignore. But if they were huge enough, it would be like what Lee's saying, where it would be impossible to ignore this huge lump on the basis because they've done sonar dragging of the lake, so to speak. Does that make sense?
Yep. How do we know all the artifacts in museums aren't all replicas?
Most of them are.
Nothing's real. Like, I understand a lot of stuff is replicas, but I mean all the famous ones, like this is the golden burial mask from King.
So people pick it up and say it's real, and we're just supposed to believe it.
Honor system.
Yeah.
Or are you talking more along lines of it's like a work of art and they're trying to pass it off as an ancient structure?
All of it. All of it
Well,
could be fake, and we're just told it's this.
As far as let's call it the last stage of making it into an exhibit, when the museum receives it, they put it through strenuous investigation to make sure that it's not faked, and most of what they get is faked and doesn't wind up becoming an exhibit, where they see this artifact and yes, it looks completely old and it's made out of old materials, but somebody went in and painted it afterwards, and they can tell that kind of stuff based upon this isn't the first time a museum's ever put up something. They've got history to compare to now, and
certain tests.
Yeah, they put it through some extraneous investigation before they tried to say that it is indeed official, even if they watched the guy dig it out of the ground, because somebody could have just buried it there themselves. And so as far as that goes, as far as the museum itself knows, it's verified that, yes, these artifacts have to be genuine because we're not going to put our name on them and then find out they're fake later and discredit our museum. The question then becomes, do you think that they are fake before the museum ever finds them and is comparing fakes to fakes so that they're all fakes?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there is that. As well as finding, like, they go through all the tests, find it's 100% true, and then a couple people in suits walk in. It's like, all right, we're taking this, and you're going to display this, and you're not going to tell anybody about it.
So when Ponce de Leon came to Central America, there was nothing but trees there, and he says, you know what, damn it, there is going to be a city of gold here, start building. And so we took it, but it was already there, but it was just him.
Yeah, he just told a great story. But no, because it's a veritable cornucopia of occult resources and or technological resources when you come into the fact that if it's all fake and being stored and hoarded or put somewhere else for different purposes. Like years ago, there was a guy had a show on the Sci-Fi Channel, and no one blinked an eye, but I thought it was really weird that this dude straight up had a show built around him going to places that were haunted and finding the specific objects that were tied to the haunting, be it human spirits or demonic spirits or whatever, and then he would just take the objects and then started keeping them all in his basement. I don't think that's such a good idea, and I'm surprised they just let him do it. I mean, it could have been 100% bullshit, but if it wasn't 100% bullshit, that's a really messed up basement to have in your house.
You're talking like a Friday the 13th, the TV show kind of thing, where there's like an antique shop and you can come and get your stuff, but then there's a secret curse behind it, you know?
Yeah, it could have been 100%.
The topic is also cursed.
It's frozen yogurt. Ooh, that's good. But the sprinkles, ooh, that's good. The sprinkles are also cursed. Oh, that's bad.
Like what was her name? Ed and Lorraine Warren, and they just had a treasure trove of mystical bad stuff.
Even though they're both dead, that museum still exists. Where like there's Annabelle and Robert the boy and all sorts of shit.
I'm just saying, the usefulness of such artifacts throughout time could serve better purpose for occult secret society reasons and governmental control than it would do for just holding it out in the public. Unless it was specifically an item such as the retransplanted tomb that we got from Egypt that I think is in a museum in New York somewhere, where we were helping Egypt reclaim and transplant a bunch of their architecture because they were building a dam and they wanted to preserve the stuff, and as a gift we were given a temple, but the agreement was this temple must be open to the public at all times because they believed it retained its spiritual power by constantly being around people that believe, or human energy around it to keep it powered up. And it's a temple it was constructed in Egypt, but it had Roman-esque things to it because it was built after Caesar Augustus came in and and as far as conquerors go, he was a smart one because he's one that decided, when we take over a place, not to knock their beliefs down into the ground, but kind of integrate it into ours so they don't have a huge rebellion and come up. But like, say if that's real, that's a very occulty thing to have that everyone's just cool with.
Well, that's true, but I'd have to say, if you think about it, from all the exhibits, I don't know how many museum exhibits you visited, but all of these useful tools that we would have that better than just displaying them. I haven't seen anything in a museum for display that might be a useful tool. All that cool stuff might have been filtered out ahead of time, and that's the stuff that doesn't make it to an exhibit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would agree with that. That's why, secret societies like Masons and stuff like that, certain relics have been sequestered and are brought forth in, secret ritualistic kind of ideals. You've got the, you've got the Masons, you've got, all these secret septs that, will grab certain iconic things before they're widely known and will pull them apart for secret ritualistic ideals.
Mm-hmm. And anything that was given to a museum, it's like, I have the great crystal of Cartouche that can hold a man's soul within. That's not going to the museum. What we get is, oh, look, it's Tutankhamun's ashtray.
Yeah.
And all of us who don't know any better say, that is the most remarkable thing ever found. Tutankhamun's ashtray. Oh, my God.
I also believe that other people play off of those ideals. They could be like, this is the ashtray of Amun-Ra. It was said to burn the ashes of the sacred pharaohs. You know what I mean? And people are like, whoa, this is the goblet of Avatun. You will notice it by its etchings, and it really was a piece of shit chalice. Yeah, it was a piece of shit chalice that was somewhere, but people made a big deal of it. And I think it works both ways. And I think some of those things that were false made it into museums and certain spectacles for regular people, and vice versa. Yeah, we could have the nutsack of Amun-Kamun, and it was it was known as the speed bag of Muhammad Ali. It still sounds fancy, but people are like, whoa.
Do you think in our generation we'll be able to see the next big body mod craze that would involve actual genetic modification, be it DNA manipulation or cybernetics?
Yes.
Oh, shit.
Before, I don't plan on living to be too old, but before I die, I'm sure it's already being considered. It's already actually been proven plausible. There are rich people trying to do it unlicensed. It's possible. It's inevitable, I think. And it's way closer than you might think.
Behind the hidden doors, my friend. I agree. I think it's already in the works currently. We've seen more progress in the form of cybernetics than we have in the form of genetic modification. But even so, that is just, behind a tinted window, as it were. You know what I mean?
And then which do you think would actually make more money, as well as possibly finally separate a good portion of humanity into subgenres. The ones that really go tech-based and the other ones that are all natural. It's like, I want gills like a fish, but I want it this way. The other person's like, well, screw that. I can breathe underwater because I have this device. But they're like, we shun the technology, keep it natural. It's like, this is how evolution should go. We're going to help it. Well, this is how evolution should go because of our brain power. And actually,
I feel that the richer people would have the genetic modifications because they're more inclined to want to fix the problem with their less subject cells, if you know what I mean. I'm not good enough, so I have money to buy myself to be good enough. They're the ones that would get more of the genetic modifications. They would get their genes spliced with fish to have gills. Now, the less poor, it would be, you can't breathe underwater and all the ice caps are melting and the world is, we're getting into a water world situation. Well, then buy this Gill Plus, and it would be the robotic or cybernetic modification. Now, with the money for the people who are producing the cybernetics, the money is in the upkeep of the cybernetics, not necessarily the cybernetics. So they don't want to genetically modify you so that you are cured of whatever ailment. They're more into the we're going to keep doing your upgrades. We're going to keep doing your modifications. We're going to keep up with the production of what you need. And over the long term, that makes more money.
Well, I agree with you on half of that. I think as far as the genetic modifications, I think it will be a cure-all, and they're going to put 10 times the price tag on it just for that very reason, which is why only the rich people will do it. And you'd have an explosion of the lower class. You got your backyard mechanics. They're just going to up their game to where they can be backyard bionics. And, I can convert a shopping cart into legs that can make you run like a champ. And the rich people will continue to get the modification, not only because it proves that they're rich, but because it's so expensive, they're the only ones that can afford it. I think it would be a fix, but I don't think it would be a patch and keep paying for it job, because there's always something else that the rich person's going to want to do to themselves.
I feel like it's like the same thing as like the cure of disease. Money for, pharmaceuticals and stuff doesn't come from curing a disease. It comes from the treatment. And I feel like it would be the same kind of thing evolved over to that. People wouldn't do so many genetic modifications because that would be the cure-all. Instead, they would have cybernetic implants that would need regular maintenance because that's where the money is.
Well, and see, that's the two directions that we're talking about going with cybernetics versus the bioengineering. And to ultimately answer the umbrella question is, I do not think that would divide the human race into these people and those people, except for in some sort of sci-fi scenario where you intentionally set this up. I think naturally we would still all refer to ourselves as humans. They're just the rich assholes with gills, and they're the broke assholes with bionic eyes.
All right. And those assholes, they bought a snorkel and flippers. I've got gills implanted.
And I would think the black market transportation and transplantation of stuff and robbery and people being mugged would get way more bloodier because they would just cut out these devices and take them.
That is already happening with the current devices, with pacemakers, with kidneys. In some areas, you don't have to worry about it as much as others, but certain parts of Central America or Southern Africa, you really could have to worry about that happening to you already right now, even though it's not on a sci-fi scale.
True enough.
I mean, I think it'd be cooler to have better night vision. Do you think the best government surveillance system outside of Facebook that we contribute to would be the cloud? Because with Facebook, we basically keep our files on ourselves updated for the government to check, let alone employers. And then the cloud, I could be misunderstanding this, but it's a giant server memory system that is owned and operated not by us that we put all our documentation into outside that we wouldn't put in Facebook.
I don't think you're thinking it exactly right, because Facebook, Google,
there are many clouds.
Yeah.
There are many clouds.
The cloud is shared. It's not one entity. It's not like we have one giant machine. Look at that, baby! It's the cloud. It's a network of systems that don't have any. It's like a warehouse versus a store that you can go in and shop. It has all the stuff, but there are no people in it. With the cloud, Facebook uses the cloud. Google uses the cloud. They're all integrated with it, so it can't be a versus as far as that goes. And the cloud itself is not a surveillance system; it's a storage system.
Yeah, and as far as you worrying about Facebook, personally, I don't ever update Facebook. I don't ever do anything with Facebook. So if I'm worried about Facebook taking my information and doing something with it, all it has is the information that I've already put into it, which I don't continually update and continually do stuff. Yeah, maybe some people do, but that's not the cloud as an evil thing.
I've just always viewed it as, it's public. Even though you're at home and you're on Facebook, it's public. If you don't want someone knowing about it, don't put it on there. And if you put it on there, don't be upset when someone saved a copy. That's all there is to it. If I'm going to run naked across a football field and then complain that people are looking at my naked body, that's stupid. It's the same thing.
Yeah, it's your dumbass fault for running naked across a football field.
Don't run naked across Facebook and people won't see your parts.
Yeah,
that's the way I live on it. I do go on Facebook once in a while, and I do update once in a while, but I will not put up anything on there that I would not be ashamed to sign it on the bottom. That was me. So then, once you've achieved that, what do you have to fear from the government seeing what you did, or anybody being able to do that? The most annoying thing is that the ad people know what kind of stuff you like to buy, and so you get pummeled with ads. It's an annoyance, but I'm not.
I have totally bought stuff off of Facebook ads.
I have a couple times.
They show you cool stuff, man.
It works. Their system works.
Yeah, it does.
But again, nothing I wouldn't admit to.
Yeah, if I were worried about it, I wouldn't have Facebook. I have a Facebook, but I still don't do shit with it. Maybe I will check up on a friend here and there every so often, but otherwise, I'm not worried about Facebook at all.
I use Facebook for the memes and the sweet deals.
I mostly only use it to keep in touch with groups because it's a very handy way for the group chat, the messenger. Talking with my theater groups, or we have our group where we can keep in contact for episodes and such.
Yeah.
That's the most handy part of it. The memes are fun, but they're also, after a half hour of looking at them, you're like, why do I even get on Facebook?
I'm the lowest common denominator. I hate memes. I really don't like them at all.
All right. On the topic of how much of documented human history do you could consider to be bullshit, how many people in history do you think are completely fabricated? Like Odysseus versus people that were allegedly to be alive as well, or famous historian like Augustus or whatever.
It's hard to sort that out when, especially as far back as it goes. Now it's someone said that someone said that someone said he was real.
The really crappy telephone game. It went from a 2-foot lizard into a fire-breathing dragon in about 4 people.
I mean, how many of you guys actually believe Reagan existed?
I never met him. I don't know.
Who's Reagan?
No, but Augustus could have been octopus, and somebody just was standing on the side of an ocean. Yes, great octopus. I will write the Odyssey. You know what I mean. Here's Homer. We all know. Shut up. Everybody knows.
No, but things like it blurs where George Washington chopping down a cherry tree and having wooden teeth and all of that stuff. Those aren't real stories. Those are based off of things that kind of happened to him.
Or like Johnny Appleseed.
Yeah, Johnny Appleseed.
Yeah, you're getting into fables.
But Johnny Appleseed was a real guy once.
Yeah, Paul Bunyan and Babe the Blue Ox and that kind of stuff. You know what I mean?
They even explained why they said Paul Bunyan could cut down, these giant trees the way he did. It's because they had a certain amount of, like, law-wise, they were only allowed to cut down so many trees. To get away with that, they would say that how much wood they got out of that came from one tree. So that's how these big things came along. They're like, that came from one tree when it was actually, from 15 to 16 trees. You know what I mean? So that's how his stuff got along, because he'd be like, he'd cut down these huge trees. He was a giant. You know what I mean?
Same as John Henry and stuff like that.
The stories like that, the fables, there gets to be a point where it's obvious that we shouldn't believe them, but it does blur. There's a Venn diagram overlap somewhere in there of people that we believe are real and have for all of our lives that are fake, and they're probably fake people that we assumed are fake that are real.
How do you think it's going to be famous people now, like later on in life, you know what I mean, or existence? People are going to be like, you guys believe in Kim Kardashian? They'll be like, no, that person never existed.
Well,
she broke the internet, man. That's why we don't have the internet no more.
We've got too much recording now. Now it's way easier to tell if someone
what happens
existed.
if it gets corrupted and we don't have it anymore? Just like how we used to burn books. They would find ways to get rid of recordings and stuff.
Well, I mean, anything short of an apocalyptic scenario, that's not going to happen.
I would think Charlie Sheen would definitely become a man of folk legend.
He was a
Given the stories
rock and roll wizard from
You
Mars.
never knew the amount of drugs that women he could do.
Charlie Sheen, he was winning but was never clean.
Dude,
He's Charlie Sheen.
he drank tiger's blood for breakfast with an 8-ball. Yeah, real shit.
He made a gourmet meal out of an ashtray, 3 cigarette butts, and an orange peel.
That's disgusting.
No, it turned out wonderful. It looked like fruity tooty French and fruity French toast when he was done. It was funny.
Sounds like no. That
And then he ended it with Charlie Sheen winning.
Yeah, that visual will just be vomiting in an ashtray.
Yeah, in the true fashion of Charlie Sheen.
It's a good thing he's such an actor that he can pretend to be an alcoholic who loves women. In every role.
You nailed it, Charlie Sheen.
You want to go bowling afterwards since you got the shirt? Did that have anything to do with the question?
Yeah, people of a legend, are they real or not? Versus the people in history. Or are the majority of the people in history a legend and never actually existed? Because there is the groups of known, I'm about to say assailants, of people in history that we know were made up, but then there's also figures that we are told were 100% real. We accept that some of their stories may be embellished a little bit, but that was a real person, versus how many were actually fake.
Well, I don't think there's anything you can do but speculate on that. Because what we've already established for ourselves as fact versus fiction is because of what was written and what was told to us. And, other than doing your own personal research to find out for yourself, as a collective, anyone we've already determined to be fact or anyone we've already determined to be fiction, I don't think that there's much we can do about that. I mean, Ostinius' cameraman didn't exist.
Yeah, clearly. I plugged my phone in, and now we will not balance where I had it.
And Nepitz's cameraman has fallen asleep, too.
There's just so much out there in the thought process. So many things, it's hard to correlate into a question.
Do you think it's possible that Sasquatches can have male pattern baldness when they get older? Covered in hair from neck to toe.
Sasquatch have male pattern baldness. Where would it start? Would it start at their mouth?
Well, maybe negative people. They're bald right here around the beard area and on the top of the head, and the rest of it's hair.
I would think
What's the male pattern baldness?
sort of thing. Because of their genetic makeup, they would not.
I mean, I've never seen an orangutan with thinning hair either, so maybe not.
The hair changing color over time, possibly graying or turn into white, has been reported.
Male pattern baldness.
I don't know. Like, if sea monsters did exist at this day and age, I think we would make them extinct because we would eat them.
Why would we eat them?
Because it's seafood. A giant squid that could be taken out from Japan in like 2 days.
Yeah, but like Nessie, like a plesiosaur or whatever. Do you think that would be good eating?
Well, there would be a market for it. Yes, we may try to capture a few and keep them in a zoos for posterity reasons, but there would be the market that they would find out that you could use these pieces for this or cosmetics, not alone just food, and we would drive them damn near to extinction.
Marine animals that aren't used for food. Like, I mean, granted, this is a stretch, but like starfish? Nobody eats starfish.
Well,
no, I'm talking, the sea monsters are specific types of creatures.
Right, like, but if like we woke up and all of a sudden there were hundreds of thousands of them, or we finally found a couple, because I think we'd put them on an endangered list right away and have to fight off poachers, even if the poachers found out that, hey, you know, when you eat this, you get younger. It's a finally new.
3 months. Wouldn't you like that, Poda?
Well, yeah, I just find it interesting that the so-called sea monsters throughout history are also the creatures that we dine upon. Crabs, squid, eels, sharks.
Close us out.
All right. This has been another episode of Poda Questions. Kind of went off the rail, but that's okay. Thank you all for listening, and keep your minds open and your thoughts flowing, and make your own correlations and questions. You can send those in. That'll be fun. From everybody here, saying have a good time. Poda, Ostinius,
bye.
Nepids,
see ya.
And Dr. Lee.
Until next time.
Thank you all for joining us today on another episode of Raiding the Fringe. If you have any comments or ideas on today's topic, you can leave a comment or contact us directly at raidingthefringe@brainforger.com. We also would ask you to like, subscribe, and follow us. You can find us on Facebook, Spotify, Libsyn, or wherever you get your podcast. Once again, thank you for joining us as we raid the Fringe.